I wasn't ready. Hey everybody, so for this video, Joseph and I thought we would answer questions about being in a relationship in law school or grad school or just all high stress environments. So this is Joseph, my husband. We have been married for 4 years. We've been together almost 12 years.
Yeah.
And we've kind of been through the whole gamut on all of this. So we thought we'd just kind of address, I guess, like the biggest questions that we feel we wish we had asked before we jumped into architecture school for his master's and law school for me while being married. So, yeah.
Pretty much.
Okay, so beyond that, I guess the only other thing to know about our background, like as a relationship, is that we got married a week later or less. We flew to Providence, Rhode Island to find an apartment and do all that kind of stuff. Came home for a few days and then packed all our stuff up in a U-Haul, minus the mattress, unfortunately, and drove cross country from Texas to Rhode Island and just started our lives there. Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest issue when we first moved in together was living together. So although we had been together for about 8 years, we had never lived together before. We started dating in high school, we kept dating through undergrad, and then we got married, and then we went to grad school. So we never lived together, we never did any of that.
Yeah.
And so we moved in together, maybe weeks before he started his master's in architecture, which undergrad in architecture was a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
I did 4 years in undergrad in architecture, and that, if you know anything about architecture school, it's very demanding, and you're in studio the entire time. So moving up to Rhode Island, Andrea kind of already knew what to expect from grad school.
But I didn't expect how I'd feel being completely alone. We have absolutely no family in Rhode Island. We didn't have any friends at the time. We moved immediately with no real plan, and I was working remotely, so online at home. So I was truly alone inside the house in a third floor walk up, listening to the couple in their 60s downstairs arguing all the time about every little thing. So
pretty much
it was a lot to deal with. Like, it's weird because I thought this would be so easy. I love being at home and in my sweatpants. This will be great. It was fine for a while, and then the hours alone increased, and so that just got a lot more difficult. But so, like, what we weren't prepared for was not just moving in and like the effect that has on like blending your life together and stuff, because it's a lot harder than I think a lot of people realize. But it was also just being a completely new place and only having each other for the first time in our lives. So at that point, our dynamic was that I take care of everything at home, all the bills, all that kind of stuff, and he does school. We're both very school-oriented people, and so I wanted him to do well. I wanted him to only take 3 years. I wanted to like make sure that it all worked out well. And then when we moved back to Texas, it was kind of the same like chaos of moving, where we moved back to Texas. He graduated. A week later, we sold our house, moved back to Texas. Pretty much broke by the end of that move because it was so expensive to move cross country again.
Yeah.
Had nowhere specifically to live, so we were kind of living with my parents and put all our stuff in storage until we found a place to live. And then we had to move 3 hours away to where we're living now and waste even more money and then look for jobs, and a month later I was in school. So it was like this huge, so much chaos every time.
Yeah.
And this time our dynamic flipped. I'm doing school That's my primary concern. So his is working. He works full time outside of the house. And he does the bills and everything like that now. I think that alone was something difficult to get used to, not just like the change of dynamic, but our new responsibilities and everything. Mm-hmm. And so like for him to get used to having to do it, and for me to get used to not doing it, like letting it go.
Yeah.
Which for anyone with like any kind of type A personality, that's not easy, and it was not easy for me at all. Mm-hmm. I think it's still not easy some weeks, like especially when like right now over the summer I'm interning, and so my workload is a lot lighter, so I have more time to worry about things that I don't need to be worrying about. So then I bug him about it. Yeah. And so like we worked through it, but it was kind of impossible, especially the first time. The first time that we moved in, like when we moved in together, because we'd never lived together, we were arguing all the time. This time we weren't arguing so much, but it's still like a hard thing to get used to, like that dynamic change. So I guess it's probably my first like real piece of advice is if you're going to make a huge life change like that, make sure there's a good buffer of like a few months, not a few weeks, to like get used to the new situation and give yourself time to adjust to what your new life is. I really wish we had done that, but you know, we didn't plan. We just never thought it would be so hard to move. And it's not even moving in together or anything that's just hard. It's just moving, period. Yeah. It causes so much stress. Like, we just moved 3 weeks ago, and it's so stressful. So yeah. But anyway, okay, so like I said, we put together a list of about 3 questions, because, well, it's 4, but one of them kind of runs into the other. So the first one was okay, so the first question is, how do you handle anger or fights? So in our relationship, it's usually me that's angry or fighting. Joseph's very passive, and I am trying to learn to be a little more, I think I am a little more passive than I used to be, but it's not that I'm more passive, it's that I've learned what is annoying to me, what angers me, and what I'm actually upset about. And I've learned that those are different things. So like, something that's annoying to me that's easy to like snap about, that you're annoyed. Something that's anger, obviously super easy to snap about, I guess. But what I learned to do, and I think I'm usually pretty good at, is kind of like identifying what actually matters, like what is actually making me upset, versus like, did I stub my toe and I'm just annoyed and I don't actually need to be angry. Yeah. So like, I don't know how to explain that better. But I think it's really just about like choosing your battles. Like, do I need to be angry? Do I need to have a fight about this? I think that's the question. It's like, every time something happens, of course something's going to bother you, annoy you, whatever. But the question is, do you need to fight about it? Like, do we have to get to that point? And that was a hard thing to learn, because I love to argue. I love to express myself. Yeah. Let's put it that way. And so at first, every little thing that upset me or annoyed me or angered me, I would just go off about. I feel like I'm making myself sound a lot worse than I hope I was.
Well, typically it's because I did something wrong and really annoyed her.
Like shrinking things in the long term.
And it's just stress in general, builds up. And I think for Andrea, it's always about that tipping point. Yeah. Whereas for me, I'm more of a very passive person when it comes to things, and I'll let her know sometimes. I'm like, hey, maybe you should do this, maybe that. And instead of full blown, like, we're going to have an argument because this really bothers me, but it kind of works out.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really argue.
We don't argue much.
But we do tell each other, like, there's nothing that we're just, like, keeping in forever, you know, like, it's not like it's building up anymore. It's just that I kind of, like, because I used to do that. I used to be worried about, like, stressing him out, so I wouldn't tell him. And then it would build up, and then I'd really have, like, this full-blown fight about absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And so, like, now it's just easier to be like, look, can you not do this? Can you please, like, well, there's that, which video is it the orientation video where it starts off where I'm like, can you please find a place for your hats or whatever?
Yeah.
That's about as angry as I get.
Yeah.
That's it. And more than likely that day I had moved it around so many times, because that's the one thing that we do a lot is, like, I'll move something to be out of the way.
And I'll put it there 2 seconds later because
it's out of his way or something. And
yeah.
But, I mean, like, that's probably the most annoying thing we do to each other now.
Yeah.
Like, but it's just because we told each other, like, okay, can you do this? Can you do that? And just calmly, like, in passing, like, hey, look, I don't really want to keep doing this. Can you please do this? You know, or whatever it is. Like, I think at first it was just about picking up after each other because we both had very different ways of being tidy or whatever. And,
yeah. So I think when it comes to being in a relationship in law school or grad school or whatever, you have to be aware of those little things. If you're the one that's at school all day and you come home,
someone complaining.
You just need to be aware about it and talk about it versus letting it just overcome you and explode.
Yeah.
Because then that's where it starts to fall into the pit where a percentage of relationships don't last in school because of blah blah blah.
Right. Oh, I forgot to mention that. So the reason I really wanted to make this video was I had a family law class this summer, and we had a divorce lawyer come and talk to us, and she asked us how many of you are married. About 5 or 6 of us raised our hands, and she's like, well, 76% of people who are married in law school aren't married by the time they finished in law school. And we all just kind of looked at each other like, gee, thanks. That's sweet to let us know. And so I kind of wanted, and I've seen a lot of people ask questions like, I have a boyfriend, how is this going to, or I have a girlfriend, how is this going to, like, ruin my life when I go to law school or whatever. And it's just that it doesn't have to, you know. And so I kind of just wanted to make this video to address that, but I forgot to mention that. But yeah, I mean, like, I think the thing is to realize, and honestly, it's compassion and understanding that outweigh the anger and the fights if you do it right? So, like, if you understand that, or as long as he understands that when I come home, or when I'm home at the end of the day, and especially if I'm still reading or whatever, my stress level is probably here. So if it's something small about, hey, can you put this away? Maybe that can wait till the weekend when I'm not cramming for something, or I'm not trying to read for class in the morning. But if it's about something really important, something big, then of course we have to talk about it. But the point is to talk about it, not argue about it or talk at each other about it, and just kind of be like, hey, when you have a minute, I really need to talk about something. Like, we need to talk about this. And obviously your tone tells you how important it is, right? So it's like, okay, well, can this wait, like, the hour that it's going to take for me to finish this? Or, you know what, let me finish, like, this paragraph, let me finish this thought, whatever, and let's talk. Because depending on the tone or whatever, then yeah, it's probably more important. But the point is, like, making time for those things, make sure they're super important. If it's going to interrupt something, and if not, if you can wait, and not forever. Like, if it's something awful, talk about it. But if it's not, wait until there's actual opportunity, I guess, is probably the best thing. Like I said, you've got to understand and be compassionate. And that goes both ways, even for the person who is in school. Like, sometimes I have to be understanding and compassionate that, like, maybe he wants to have a conversation. Like, just a conversation, and about something other than law school. And, okay, sure, let's do that. I'm going to try really hard. Does it always work?
No.
But I'm going to try. So, yeah.
All right.
How do you balance school and home life? And I think we're kind of moving towards that.
Yeah.
I'd say it's still compassion, understanding.
Yeah, it's more about organization and scheduling now when it comes to balancing anything.
Yeah.
you know, I work now, and so obviously when I come home, I have things that I've got to get done, and then I want to make sure that I spend time with Brady and Andrea. And Andrea, whenever she's at school, it's try to get as much schoolwork done as you can, and when you come home, try to make some time for the family, and then get back to your work. And like I was telling Andrea the other day, earlier, I was kind of raised that's kind of like, okay, you take care of school and that's it, you know, and then just focus on that and make sure you do that very well. Yeah. So in our relationship, the first 3 years were of me trying to take that on, you know, take care of school, work when I can, and then just kind of focus on that. And that's why Andrea kind of took everything over for those 3 years, and now it's the same but opposite.
Right.
So.
And I think like when it comes to balance, it's not about making all these commitments. That's probably the worst way to do it, I think, is like committing yourself everywhere. I think what we typically talk about is, I really want to do this weekend. Do you have time? What do you think? And okay, how badly do you want to do it? You know, like, so do I have to work it into my schedule, or can it be worked in if I have the time?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like, we kind of have to talk about what it is we want to do. We don't really go to the movies anymore. Very rarely. It's got to be like a really big movie that we both really want to see. We don't. I mean, mostly we go out to eat, or that's about it.
Yeah. You either have plans that are non-negotiable that you make happen, or you have plans that you're okay with not happening. So like going to the movies, having that date or whatever, unfortunately falls into the category where it's like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, then it's all right.
Right.
Whereas going to see our family when we can, you know, that's something that we put high up there.
When it's a big event or something
Yeah.
like that. I think the biggest thing about balancing is that you have to remember you're not just balancing your school life and the other people in your life. You need to also balance yourself in there. So there are things, my version of unwinding and having fun is not the same as Joseph's at all. So like, if I'm trying to unwind and have fun and I go do the thing he likes to do instead of the thing I like to do, I'm not gonna unwind or be having much fun, just because I'm already stressed out. So why would I do something that, although I'll do it for you, is not my way to de-stress? It's just gonna make me more stressed out because he's very social. That stresses me out. I don't like being social. So it's not that I don't like it, it's just I have a lot of anxiety and it makes me anxious. But yeah, so you have to remember that in that balance you have to include yourself. So I think most of the time, as long as it's not one of those non-negotiable events or weekends or whatever, he understands when I say, why don't you go? I'm gonna stay here, do my thing, why don't you go? Because I have to be able to de-stress in that weekend too. A weekend is 2 days long. Sometimes Friday if you arrange your schedule well or whatever. So like this next semester on Fridays I will only have class until like 10. So I can probably include Friday in my weekend. But at most that's 3 days to get all the homework done, unwind, and spend time with someone else. That's not as much time as you would think it is to do all those things, especially if we want to go somewhere not 5 minutes away or anything like that. We also have Brady to think about. So it's just a lot to balance. And if you're trying to keep it even every weekend, you will lose your mind. So you have to know what the priority is. During finals, he didn't ask me to do anything. He knows better. Don't ask. Because how could you? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It would honestly be mean to say we have to do this during finals.
Yeah.
Now, if it's something you had planned and it's like someone's wedding or something, then yeah, that's probably a big deal. And you've really got to weigh it and think about it. But what a lot of people will tell you is either your family's going to understand or not. but you need to do what you need to do. You're the one spending the thousands of dollars on school. You're the one that gets the passing or failing or curve or whatever grade you get. You're the one that has to live with yourself. So really what it needs to be is, I think is probably the biggest thing too, is the relationship's here, and that's it. You know what I mean? For me, I have an order of priority, right? So for me, it's going to be school, you and Brady, then my parents and my siblings. And then from there, well, and then your parents and siblings. And then from there, we just, if it falls in, it falls in. You know, you cannot keep adding people to that bubble of everything. You know what I mean? It's just, you will lose your mind. And I'm not saying that you can't do those things. I'm saying that you can't have to do those things. I don't know if that makes sense. But, I mean, what do you think? Like,
just pay attention to what you're putting on your plate.
Yeah, that's true.
Law school and grad school is already...
You're so eloquent today.
Law school and grad school is already very tough and demanding. So be very selective of what you decide to take on outside of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess as the person in school, be aware of what you're demanding of yourself. And as the significant other or the family of that person or anything like that, be aware of what you're demanding of them. You know? It's long hours. It's a lot of work. And when you're not working those long hours, your mind is still going.
Yeah.
It's awful. Like, when, if you love it, it's not awful. But it's awful to be in a situation where your mind is going and you're thinking and you're cranking it out and you can't write it down because you're at a bar or something like that when you don't want to be. Does that make sense? Like, it's one thing if you're at a bar and you really want to and you're trying to forget everything and it's not working, keep going, it'll get there. But if you're at a bar and you don't want to be,
that's bad for you.
Well, if you want to, you can't judge. But if you don't want to be there and your mind is going and everything, you're gonna lose it. Like, it's just not. So, yeah. Anyway, I think that's enough on that. Oh, and then the last thing we wanted to talk about was like the perception to the outside world, and that kind of goes with what we were just saying.
Yeah. So it's funny because at work, I tease Andre about this all the time. My coworkers don't believe that my wife exists.
Didn't. I hope they figured it out.
Yeah, didn't. And the same thing in grad school. No one believed me that as a 23, 24-year-old that I had a wife.
Well, I think that had more to do with your age, too.
Well, regardless, they didn't believe that I had a wife, and especially because Andrea never came around to any of the events or like hangouts that we had. And so it's kind of like, how do you deal with that?
Well, and for me, though, when you were in grad school and even undergrad because of architecture, my mom was worried, like, he was cheating on me because he was never around. And I was like, it's fine. No. But, so, I think the point of that is that his coworkers didn't believe it because I was so busy with school. It was my first year. It's my first year. He's been at his job exactly as long as I've been in law school. He started the first day of my orientation.
Yeah.
And so they didn't believe it because I was too busy to come around. And I was losing my mind. The first semester I was losing my mind. The second semester I was just busier. Still losing my mind, but a little bit less. And so it was just like this weird dynamic. And when he was in grad school, he was never around. He had to be at school. Because the thing about architecture is everything has to be done in the studio. Whereas a law student does not have to be in the library. Is it better if you study well like that? Probably. But not necessarily. And so the outside world just has this like view of your relationship. Like, it must not be working. He must be cheating. She must not exist. I don't get that. Like, who makes up a wife? But yeah, like, it must be these things, right? They assume that it must be whatever their mind says. And it's really funny to us because, like, we've never been the kind of people that need to be together all the time. Like, ever. We just aren't like that. Well, we went to different high schools. we always have had like different interests and stuff, so it just wasn't always necessary to be together for everything.
Yeah.
And that never changed. But for some reason, now that we're older and married, I guess we're supposed to be together all the time.
But there are two different types of relationships, right? So there are people dynamics like what we are in right now, and then others where you want to be with your significant other the entire time.
Yeah. And neither is wrong.
And so that kind of refers back to the last question, work-life balance. I understand that I have events and things that I have to go to for work that I'd love to bring Andrea with me, but I know that she has her priorities, she has school that she has to get done, and I'd much rather her focus on getting that stuff done than pull her away, take her to an event that I know that she probably won't even enjoy.
Because I'm so busy even in my mind.
Yeah, and then stress out even more because that could have been 3 hours of her studying instead. Mm-hmm. And so it's...
And the other thing tough. You can't forget about is when you're stressed, or a majority of people, when they're stressed, procrastination happens. Mm-hmm. Just anxiety happens. So like, even if something only really does take you an hour, there's a good chance it's going to be a lot longer than an hour that you're going to be spending doing it. Because you're going to procrastinate. You're going to want to cry sometimes. And that's the other thing. Everyone in law school cries. Never forget that. But you're going to want to cry sometimes. You're going to want to just run around screaming or scream into a pillow. I've done that a few times in the past year. Sometimes I blare music when Joseph's not home. It's just that it's never going to happen the way you think it's going to happen. So part of that balance is understanding that life happens when it wants to, not when you want it to. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing you can do about that. So sometimes we do have plans, and I think we're totally going to make it. We're going to do this. It's going to be great. I got up on time, and then they don't happen. And I have to say, I'm so sorry. I can't go. Mm-hmm. And it sucks. But what are you going to do about it? You know, like, as a significant other, the only thing you can do is be super pissed and take it out on them, make them come with you, or whatever. And who wins in that situation? Absolutely no one, because you're both going to be angry, even being there. And then as, like, the person in school, what are your options? Fail and go and maybe even cry at this event because you know you're about to just lose it, or stay home, know that they'll probably be mad at you, but what else can you do? You know? Mm-hmm. So you've got to decide, and you've got to know that both of you, I think, have to know that, like, being angry doesn't have to be forever. Yeah. You know? And let go of the anger. Mm-hmm. I think that's the only other thing that I've seen, I think, just with people we know and things like that, is when you don't let go of the anger is when you've basically let go of the relationship. After a while, that's what will end up happening. It's like the longer you hold into anger about things that you really, even if you did have control over, but you really, like, couldn't change, mm-hmm. the quicker that's going to devolve into just not being a relationship.
So I think final remarks to wrap it up. If you're in a relationship right now or thinking about getting into a relationship while you're in law school or grad school,
have a conversation.
Yeah, talk it out, be understanding, and be aware.
Honest.
Yeah, be honest with yourself. You know yourself best. You know how you study. You know what you need to get through school. And make sure that your significant other knows that, mm-hmm. and that they're going to want to support you rather than be upset when you spend an extra 2 hours at school studying and they're wondering why you're not spending the time with them.
Yeah.
And obviously, if they aren't understanding, then you might have to figure something out. Mm-hmm. Spend more time during the week getting your stuff done so that you can dedicate some time to them. Yeah. And it's tough, and it's a relationship, and
I will say, though, one thing that we do well is we always have dinner together. Even if it is watching TV so that I'm unwinding at the same time that we're eating together. And then I say pause it, we talk about something, and then we play it again. We always have dinner together, and at least one night a weekend we do something. Again, even if it is dinner or something, but we do something. And every now and then I'm at the point where I need to unwind so much, but I also miss you, that I say no TV, nothing, let's sit at the kitchen table and let's just sit there. Even if it's in silence sometimes. Like sometimes all you need is that other person to be there with you.
Company.
Yeah. And that's a good thing, I think. Like, so you would always dedicate like those, like that hour and a half to 2 hours, whatever it is. It's the more amount of time. Like, just going camping, which is something he would really want to do that I wouldn't want to do ever. But even if I wanted to do it, that would be almost impossible to commit to during the year. It would have to be something that's like, hey, I actually don't have a lot going on this weekend. Let's go. Like, it would almost always be a last minute thing. So having like a standing, maybe dinner date, I think is okay. But having a standing several hours date, probably not realistic. So really just depends. But yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. You have to be honest with yourself and with your partner, and if you can't handle having that third person of school in the relationship, be honest about it, because it's so much worse if you're stressing each other out about it than talking about it. So yeah, that's it.
True.
So I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you found it informative. I guess if you have any more questions or anything like that you'd like us to answer, let us know. And we'll see you in the next one.
See you later.